Happy New Year and welcome 2026. I hope you had a wonderful start to the new year. And this is kind of a historic year that we're entering because Warren Buffett ended his tenure as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway at the end of the year. So this year, in my life is the first time that Warren Buffett is not the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. So it is a big year, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Investing Mastermind Podcast. My name is Signe Loenholdt.
And I'm Michelle Marki.
So, Michelle, let's talk about this. What does this shift mean for Berkshire Hathaway? That's what we're going to talk about today. It could be from a greater scale or just right now in the moment. But what do you think it's going to mean for the company, for Berkshire Hathaway, for shareholders of the company?
Well, first of all, like Warren Buffett would reassure all of us shareholders, the company is in good hands, in the able hands of Greg Abel. So we should not fear that the stock is going to tumble. It should at least maintain a lot of its market value. But as we know, the price is not always equal to value. And that's been shown evidence in how Berkshire itself hasn't been buying back its own shares for 5 straight quarters. So that could be a bit of a warning sign that maybe Berkshire Hathaway itself could be a little bit overvalued. And part of the reason why Berkshire Hathaway has been a net seller of stocks for 12 straight quarters. So that's like 3 years of Berkshire selling stocks more than they're buying stocks. So it's interesting how while we can be reassured that Berkshire Hathaway as a company is strong, but they're not showing as much confidence in the overall valuations of stocks, both in their own and also some of the ones they own. Like they've been selling off a lot of Apple lately. But otherwise, what do you think, Signe, about what this means for this new era of Berkshire?
What Buffett said himself, he was interviewed recently by Becky Quick. And of course, he needs to ensure everyone that Berkshire is going to last. So what he said is that he can't think of a company that's going to last 100 years like Berkshire Hathaway is that candidate, and that he has full trust on Greg Abel. What's going to be interesting to see is if the shareholders believe that as well. It's kind of genius how he also did structure, the way that, some shares have been given out to charities. And of course, there's private shareholders in the company as well. In that way, he have kind of safeguarded the company by also giving out some shares to different charities so that they would keep those shares and not sell right away. But since Buffett, at least at the time of recording here, since he has, left on New Year's Eve and Greg took over, the stock did decline a little bit. But of course, that's like super short term. And let's think about long term instead of the short term. Of course, what would be great is if the stock price falls, you would be able to actually buy some more shares. Some of the kind of guru investors or whatever to call them that we follow, if you look at what they're saying and sharing about this, I believe it was Monish, like first of all, Monish, I know he has 100% confidence in Berkshire. And I think it was him who mentioned that it would be better to buy a Berkshire stock compared to a S&P 500. So if you were today to decide, okay, am I going to buy the index, the S&P 500, or should I buy a Berkshire stock? What he has said is he would rather, to my understanding, he would rather buy a Berkshire stock compared to the S&P 500 index fund because he believes that Berkshire Hathaway is going to perform better. And when we look at the past results, of course, you can't always say that, the past doesn't mirror or the future is not exactly like the past. But if we did take a look at how did Berkshire perform compared to the S&P 500, at least during Buffett's ownership, Berkshire Hathaway grew 19.4% per year, and the S&P 500 10.4 if you reinvested the dividends in S&P 500. So Berkshire did almost double as well as the S&P 500, and I assume that's why Monish mentioned that he would prefer Berkshire over the S&P 500, that the capital allocation in Berkshire is better than what we see the general consumer voting with their money in S&P 500, what they vote on, so to speak. I don't know if it makes sense. Maybe it's a little too complex, but yeah.
And it just goes to show the staying power of Berkshire Hathaway, that so many strong, accomplished investors remain invested in Berkshire, like Mario Gabelli's fund or Chris Bloomstrand's fund. A lot of those guys who've been giving quotes lately to the Wall Street Journal of talking about how the Berkshire's in great hands in this next generation of leadership. Like, people are still remaining invested. So I don't think anybody has to worry about if Berkshire somehow were to tumble. It would just be a temporary tumble. And then probably a lot of us are thinking we would buy more if the stock price goes down, because it's just like what we've talked about in the past. When you see a food item on sale at the grocery store, you get excited, not sad that something you want to buy is more on sale at the grocery store, and then you want to buy more because you want to stock up on it. That's exactly the same what you want to do with great quality stocks in the stock market. And of course, this is not advice. We're not saying anybody should buy Berkshire, but you obviously know we've been taught by a lot of Buffett's ideology, and a lot of the famous investors we follow try to follow in the footsteps of Warren Buffett. So we're biased, but hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. And as I mentioned to you earlier, before we started recording, Michelle, I was quoted in a Business Insider article where they actually interviewed me right after that shock we got at the annual meeting in May this year. So I was quoted by saying I would buy more. The stock price would decline because of the news. What would I do? And I was quoted to say I would buy more. That article, that interview came right after that historic Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting 2025 in May. I'm sitting in the crowd, and all of a sudden, I just feel something big is going to happen right now. Like, there's a big announcement coming. You can kind of feel it in the energy that he's pausing, and then he's saying the words that he is, gonna hand over the company, make Greg Abel lead the company. And it was a big shock. If you imagine sitting in that crowd listening, and you look around and there's all these finance people just, in their suits. And of course, some of them are in more relaxed outfit on the day, but, you just look around and you see all of their faces and how that bomb that just dropped, everybody knew it was going to come at some point, but just being there, you could just feel the energy of people just being in that shock after, and like, what is this going to mean? And there was so much, chatter, of course, afterwards, and people, in the hallways, and just listening to that. So, and that's also, that whole Business Insider article is about, what are people saying right after coming out from that annual meeting. But it was definitely a surprise. It was a big shock. I don't know. I was like, I'm definitely going to go to the annual meeting, was what I thought this summer, because it could be that annual meeting where he's going to say that this is the end. And if not last year, it would have come this year or the year after, right? So you kind of knew that it was coming to an end. He had kind of, alluded to that a little bit. So yeah, so now it has happened, and it's going to be really interesting to see, is the stock price going to be impacted? I am kind of curious. I wouldn't mind owning more Berkshire stock. Again, it's not advice, but I would definitely, also, since, with my current situation, I do have some cash available to purchase some shares, and I kind of hope they would fall more. So you had been tracking a little bit, Michelle, about how the stock price did since the summer.
Yeah, it looks like since the announcement in early May, the stock price had reached $530 in Berkshire B shares. I follow that one because, not like I buy Berkshire A shares, not rolling in that kind of dough, but the B
Yeah.
shares, they had peaked around that time, and they even hit a low of around $460 a share in August. And now it's been back up close to around $500 a share as of early January 2026. So we'll see where it goes from here. But, it something to think about is, if you can try to figure out Berkshire Hathaway's valuation itself. And there are some other great students of Berkshire like Adam Mead, who studies the valuation, and you can try to come up with an intrinsic value of Berkshire to decide for yourself, is this a good price to pay for the value you're getting? Or did its value need to catch up to the price at some point? Like maybe the price shot over way what a lot of people, including Buffett, would normally expect for Berkshire Hathaway. And then it will just take some time until Berkshire generates that value to command the stock price that it's currently at. But, everybody can be their own judge on that. So something to think about.
Yeah, but also I think it's very difficult to actually put a price on what is the Berkshire Hathaway, what is the margin of safety price, because how I see Berkshire Hathaway is a little bit like not like an index, but like a fund, an ETF, where you have in the past it was Warren Buffett that was the fund manager, cherry picking wonderful businesses to the company. In the future, it's going to be led by Greg Abel, but then Ted Weschler is going to be making the investment decisions, it sounds like, in the future. So the way I see it is, is this company going to continue to be great capital allocators? And I believe that because, they were taught by one of the best, they were taught by Warren Buffett, and they, probably are going to continue his style of investing. So the way I see it is more, do you believe in that, quote, fund manager? So I see it more like investing in an ETF, maybe rather than investing in what would be considered a smaller business that's maybe a little bit easier to understand, because Berkshire can be very difficult to understand. There's so many subsidiaries, there are so many companies, they own so many businesses, right? So it's like super difficult. And you mentioned Adam Mead, he actually updated the book. He's written a book, it's right over here on my bookshelf. It's about the financial history of Berkshire Hathaway, and he just updated it recently so that it reflects, the full term of Warren Buffett. So go out, buy it. We can potentially leave a link to the Amazon store in the show notes for this podcast to go and get Adam's book about the full financial history of Berkshire Hathaway under both before Buffett came in, but also until the very end. So,
Yeah. And speaking of having some cash to invest, Buffett is leaving Greg Abel with a $358 billion cash treasure chest of so much cash that who knows what Greg is going to do with all that money. So we're in similar company if some of us investors are holding on to some extra cash, because it's like Berkshire's building a Noah's Ark. They don't know when a financial storm is coming, but they're going to be ready when people are going to give opportunities in selling off stocks and companies, and Berkshire will be there to help support some really important companies when there's the next financial crisis, so to speak.
I love the scenario that actually happened since from May until now, because what happened was that Warren Buffett got to buy Google, which he has desired for many years. So Google actually was trading at a discount earlier in 2025. It is no longer. So this is definitely not any advice to go buy anything. But I love that he was actually able to end on that note, because he has mentioned in the past that he had missed Google, but all of a sudden it was trading at a discount. Warren Buffett invested in Google, and he got to do that before he left. And Greg Abel still has, like you say, Michelle, plenty of cash to, make decisions in the future. But I'm really so happy that actually he got to make his last investment, and it was an investment that he really desired to do. I think that's just absolutely awesome.
It's interesting how Google would be a company that Berkshire is willing to invest in, because they've been a net seller of, say, Apple stock. And at one point in time, Buffett considered Apple to be the greatest company in the world. It makes me wonder if he doesn't think that anymore.
I think it's just a ridiculous price. Have you seen the stock price of Apple? That is absolutely like, huh?
Yeah.
It's overvalued. In my opinion, with the investment method that I'm using, so I honestly think it's just because it's ridiculous. And he did mention in May that there were some tax purposes as well, and blah blah blah. So I mean, we don't know why he would sell Apple, but it sounds like what he said in May was that he was going to keep Apple. It was one of those companies he was going to keep forever. So,
Yeah, and they still own a good amount of it. It's just been pared back. But like it's an interesting juxtaposition of Berkshire buying Google but selling Apple in like an interesting like that like it goes to show not all big tech companies are the same.
yeah, and when he first started selling Apple, I believe, it was at the annual meeting in 24, we did discuss, okay, what is he getting ready to buy since he's, you know, open to selling Apple stock that he has said he want to hold on to. What is it that he wants to buy? And there was a lot of rumors on what was it he was preparing to, what was he getting ready for at that time, and then nothing much happened, but he did get to buy Google. So yeah, that's just absolutely awesome.
Well, and speaking of some other changes at Berkshire, we've also learned that the Geico CEO, Todd Combs, is leaving to go to JP Morgan. And I think that's interesting, being that recently the Wall Street Journal also quoted Buffett in his Thanksgiving, November 2025 letter in saying that Greg understands more about the property casualty business than a lot of PNC executives. So I don't know if that was a dig at Todd. Maybe he didn't mean it that way, but it's just interesting timing that somebody who was a very important investor for Berkshire is no longer heading up one of the biggest property and casualty companies within Berkshire. And I wonder if somebody else like Greg or someone else will be the de facto boss of Geico.
Exactly. And I remember reading those news. Now, I've been in, a part of the corporate world. And when I read those articles, I was like, I wonder what has gone on because this came out kind of out of the blue. And what the articles alluded to was definitely there was something between Greg and Todd. I mean, we don't know what's going on, but there was definitely, I would say, some tea there. If you're in the corporate world, maybe some people know about it, and I think it's always kind of. I'm sorry, I'm small like that. I kind of like that corporate gossip type thing and speculating on what exactly went on. I don't know, so I don't want to say anything here because I don't know what went on. But I think it's so interesting with that type of gossip, and even for myself, kind of speculating, oh, what went down? Because it is funny. Why did he leave in that transition period between Buffett, but before Buffett actually ended as a CEO and Greg Abel took over? It is kind of, one of those pivotal people that's leaving the company and mentioned that as a key person in the past, and all of a sudden he's leaving. So that was kind of 100% there's some gossip in that, some juicy, but we don't know what it is.
Well, and sometimes maybe it's just a natural change of the guard. Like when a new boss comes into the role, there probably naturally he would want to elevate some of his own people who have been loyal and
Mhm.
have proven themselves to him. And maybe Todd wants a new challenge. Like maybe he enjoyed the time when he was with Geico under Buffett's tutelage, but then now that there's no more Buffett, maybe he wants to carve out his own path, no longer
Yeah, but it
under
was a
someone
funny
else's
role.
shadow.
I mean, it's a good role, but it is a little bit of you want to go from Geico to that role. It seemed like it was a role that was created for him, so because I'm sure there was people that was or companies that was ready to, let's grab this guy, but it seems like it was a role that was made for him. That's, to ensure that, okay, let's get this talent to work for us. And, from what I know, Buffett also have a very, very close relationship to Jamie Dimon. And so,
Hmm.
it wasn't, I can see why he ended up there, but it's a strange role after Geico, in my opinion.
Mm. Yeah, definitely different. Not very much what we'd expect, but yeah, it's a changing of the guard.
It is, and that's exactly, it could be as, boring as that, but as you can hear, I'm like ooh, ready to to come up with some more juicy things on that. But yeah, you're right. It's probably, just setting your own team And that is important, when the new person takes over, that they are comfortable, 100% comfortable with their team, and probably, that's we might actually see more of that coming now, right? Where he's going to make some changes. And so the big question is right now is also what's going to happen at the annual meeting this year. So of course, it's a publicly traded company, so they need to host an annual meeting. Some companies host it virtually, some like Berkshire Hathaway always did it in person. So what we can speculate on is what is going to happen in May, right?
Yeah, and probably if you read Buffett's letter from November, he said that he won't be talking endlessly and he won't be writing the annual report. So I'm hoping he's still at the annual meeting, but probably the questions will first go to Greg before Buffett might chime in. Maybe Buffett will take a note out of Charlie's book, the late Charlie Munger, and just only say some words when there's really something meaningful that Greg hasn't already covered. So I kind of wonder if Buffett will kind of be like his former best friend and also in a way mentor Charlie in that way, just kind of be more quiet as he was saying in the letter. And we can always look back upon Buffett's many letters. So even though we should expect more of the tone and direction to come from Greg, we can still learn a lot from the stories that Buffett recounted. Like he talked a little bit about his childhood and a lot of the influential men in his life, including Charlie and many other great executives who lived in Omaha. And Buffett will always have great stories that we can reread, even if he's not writing them as often. But for as long as he's still around, we can hopefully look forward to his future Thanksgiving letters, as that's what he said he would still write.
I'm planning on going to Omaha this summer. I know Vitaly Katzenelson, who is also a very famous investor. I love, love, love his Q&A sessions. Like I really see him as kind of the new Buffett. He's so interesting to listen to, and so in terms of actually sharing super valuable information. So he's a fund manager, and he usually hosts a breakfast and a QA session in Omaha. And like last year, I got an invitation. It actually came quite early to that Q&A session. So he's definitely going to be there. I haven't heard from anyone else. I got the New Year's letter both from Guy Spear and also from his team, but I actually don't know if he's going to continue Value X at Berkshire or if they're going to do, something else. I'm not, I don't know anything about that yet, but when I know, of course, I'll keep you posted. Also, if any of the listeners wants to go to Omaha, what is the program going to be? Who's going to be there? And I remember also saying to Business Insider that that was one of my concerns, right? Will the community continue after Buffett? And it looks like, at least, with Vitaly hosting this QA still, that something is going to happen in Berkshire, in Omaha this summer. So I will be there.
That's great. And hopefully, a lot of fellow investors will still want to keep up that tradition. And some might even branch out on their own. Like I know Markel has been hosting their brunch, but maybe who knows if they're going to focus things more in Virginia going forward and try to be more Berkshire-like, but in their own
Mhm.
state. So
Yeah,
something to look out for.
that's a very, yeah, they would usually kind of have their little mini annual event at Berkshire, but then also do one in Virginia shortly after. So that's a very, very good observation. Will they continue, or are they going to try to be the new Berkshire where everybody is kind of going to Virginia instead? That's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do. Hmm?
Yeah, so much to see what will unfold in 2026.
Yes, exactly. It's going to be an exciting year, and nobody knows what's going to happen unless you have a crystal ball. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see as everything kind of pans out. So definitely interesting. For me and Michelle, we really hope that you're going to have a wonderful, wonderful 2026, that it's going to be exactly your year like you hope it's going to be. And we will be back with a new episode in the near future. So take care and see you then.
Till next time.
If you enjoyed the show and found the content informational, we would be super grateful if you would leave us a review and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you automatically get new episodes in your feed.
The contents of the Investing Mastermind podcast are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. None of this is investing advice, and if you need help in your personal situation, please consult with a professional.